All right, here's an explanation of heroic Lura. So, at the beginning of the fight, Lura will be sitting at the bottom middle of the room. We're going to put the tank in front of Lura between her and the dark well. If you go within the dark well center of the room, you'll die instantly. We want to make sure that we've got primarily melee DPS in one of the groups, healers in another group, both the tanks in one group, and range DPS in another. Explanation on that will come up shortly. At the beginning of the fight, the first thing that's gonna happen is an ability called Death Dirge, which is basically a memory game. And in the memory game, there's gonna be a possible 5 symbols that may appear. It's either gonna be T, diamond, X, triangle, or circle. They'll appear in a random order and a flash for approximately 2 seconds. You'll see them within 3 separate locations surrounding Lura down here. What you want to make sure you do is assign one caller that's going to call those as they appear. So in this situation, they would say circle, then X, diamond, T, and triangle. And then they would need to call all five one more time. So they would call circle, X, diamond, T, triangle. Players in the raid group will get then a random one of those marks placed on top of them. So in the situation I'm looking at here, I've got player one down here who has the circle on them. They were standing on the left hand side of the room. I've got a player four with the T over here. What we need to do is we need to get each of those players starting at this corner to go around the boss in a clockwise direction and place themselves with the first symbol up here, then next, then next, then next, then next in a clockwise direction around the room. There'll be a beam that starts on the tank and fires in this direction. It will rotate clockwise around the room and it must hit all of those symbols in the correct order or it'll be a raid wipe. So, what we do is we get each of those players to run the correct positions. So when that beam fires around the room, it hits number one first, circle, then X, then diamond, then T, then triangle, and then returns back to the start, and then we can continue on with the fight. Straight after that occurs, Heaven's Glaze will fire off from where Lura is. There'll be five of them. I'm representing them with these pink symbols here. They'll shoot off in a straight line. There'll be a safe zone between each of them where all of the players in the raid that can stand to avoid being hit by them. Those glaze will continue bouncing around the room consistently throughout the entire section of phase one. We'll also have a thing called a dark quasar that spawns next. This dark quasar is going to rotate around the room either clockwise or anti-clockwise. Its direction is random. In this video, I am showing that it's going in an anti-clockwise direction. So there'll also be, at the same time as this occurring, those glaives continuing to bounce themselves around the room. And I've represented them with these red arrows here, which won't be in the rest of the slides. But just to give you an idea, they're always moving. At this time, around about here, the tanks are going to be doing their taunt swap because they'll be building up stacks of a thing called Heaven's Lance. And when it gets to 5 stacks, it will apply Impale to the tanks. Once one tank has Impale, that is when they must do a taunt swap. Once we've finished doing those rotations from the Dark Quasar, we'll come to a stop. And then we're going to have this interesting mechanic called Safeguard Prism, which is basically going to be Safeguard Matrices, which are 3 orbiting bodies that go around Lura. Each of them is going to have 6 stacks of a Safeguard debuff on them. We need to interrupt each of them 6 times to remove all of those stacks to have them be destroyed. Each of them decreases the damage that is done to Lura by 33%. So all 3 of them, 33%, 66%, 99%. While they're all up and rotating, there's 99% decreased damage to Lura. So these are the targets when they appear. We need to make sure that we're targeting them with interrupts, CCs, and whatever we can to get rid of those 6 stacks. The glaze continue bouncing around the room while this is going on. Once they have all been dealt with, they will then spawn crystals. There'll be midnight crystals and there'll be dusk crystals. The crystals I've indicated here, the midnight crystals are the bluer ones around the room, and there'll be some ones called dusk crystals that are in this side of the room. Healers, you want to be looking out for the dusk crystals. DPS, you want to be looking out for the midnight crystals. The reason for this is DPS is going to need to grip, pull, and kill all of those midnight crystals on top of the boss as quickly as possible before they finish casting a thing called Cosmic Fracture. The healers, while that is going on, are going to be spotting where those dusk crystals were, and they're going to need to heal them to full health, and then they will turn into a thing called a Dawn Crystal. So this healer here is healing this one, this healer here healing this one, and the other healers will be doing the same thing while this is occurring. Once that's happened, we're going to nominate 2 players who are our best at dodging mechanics and our most competent players, probably, that are also potentially ranged players, to go and pick up those dawn crystals. So those dawn crystals that were healed up are going to be picked up by two players. They pick them up by simply walking across them. Once they've picked those up, they can't be hit by any abilities, or they will spawn a two-circle soak that players will have to run within and soak if they get hit. So in the picture I've shown down here, this guy here that just picked up his dawn crystal also got hit by a glaive at the same time. And so because he got hit, he spawned two of these soaks, and two players need to notice that and need to quickly run inside those two soaks. If you don't get inside them, it's big AoE damage and it will likely wipe the raid. These crystals can be dropped by these players by using their extra action button, and they can then be left on the ground for a moment. They can stay there for 3 seconds before they do anything. After 3 seconds, they start damaging the whole raid. So, as a summary of what's going to happen throughout phase one, we're going to have 3 rounds of the memory game that's going to occur as we go around the room. We're going to have 3 rounds of the glaives, so 5 glaives coming off the boss. We're also going to have 2 rounds of the spinning beams, the dark quasar that's either going to make us go left or right around the room. And we're going to have 2 rounds of the safeguard prism, which is where we do the interrupts. I want to talk about the second time we get to those safeguard prism round, because there's a way that we can make this fight a little bit easier. When we get to them the next time, wherever it occurs, maybe it occurs here where we are now, maybe it occurs, everything's over this side of the room, wherever it is that it occurs, we just need to make sure that while we're doing it, what we try and do here is we target one of them and we put a mark on them. So in this case, I said we put a skull on this guy here. And when we put the skull on him, no one interrupts that one at all. We interrupt the other ones and we get rid of all their stacks and destroy those debuffs. So the reason we do this and we get rid of 2 of them is if we don't ever finish interrupting the last one, we get no more midnight crystals and no more dawn crystals spawning in the room, which is one of the times that players are most likely to wipe. And because we have no need then to CC or heal up those crystals that have spawned, we can spend all of our time DPSing Lura instead. And because we've killed 2 of them and each of them does 33% damage reduction, we're still doing 66% of the damage toward Lura. And after 20 seconds, we can continue doing 100% damage because this debuff only lasts that long. This means that we don't have to do any extra mechanics. We don't have to assign 2 more players to go and get the dust crystals and run them, the dawn crystals, and run them around the room and do all of the mechanics required for that. So we then have to rely on 2 competent people, and we get to have more DPS uptime on the boss, and it works out statistically to have more damage on the boss doing this. After that's occurred, or after actually the second memory, the third memory game has occurred, and the glaives are being fired out, that's when we're going to go into the intermission. Now, the reason we have those groups set up is because we want to be able to spread the raid out a little bit. So we're going to have one of the groups. So group 1 is going to go to the left here a bit. Group 2 is going to be around the middle where they can heal everyone. Group 3 is going to be the same. Group 4 is going to head over to the right. In this case, you can see these players over here, the ones that I'm saying have the dawn crystals on the right because they were the ranged players that picked them up in the first place. As the intermission begins, we're all going to get pulled in toward the center of the room through a ability called Total Eclipse. This is going to suck you toward the center. If you get pulled into the center, you're going to die. So just resist that pull. After that occurs, we're going to end up with a bunch of weird things occurring. We're going to have things called star splinters. They're going to be targeted on 4 different players all at the same time, and that's going to change to another 4 players, another 4 players, another 4 players. Every single player in the raid is going to be targeted by this ability at least once. We're also going to have Darkwell lasers that fire off from the center of the room. These ones don't rotate, they just fire in a straight line and they go all the way around the room. Now, these star splinters, if you're a player and there's a person beside you that has star splinters, you can stand between where their splinters are firing and not take damage. You can also position yourself, like I'm doing this little video, this picture here. The edge of this spike stops before this player and it doesn't continue doing damage past the edge of the spike. So you can actually stand just out of range of it and also be safe. You can be safe between it as well. But you'll note as we're looking at this, one of the players there that had the Dawn Crystal on them has also been targeted. And if a player with a Dawn Crystal gets targeted by the Star Splinter and the Star Splinter explodes, that means that this player here is then going to cause 2 soaks. So there's a way we can deal with that. And that was where we get to carry one player to press their extra action button. They drop their Dawn Crystal, they run to the side, they take the explosion from the splinters, they run back and pick up their Dawn Crystal. When you're firing these splinters, by the way, if there's a crystal on the ground, you just need to make sure that your splinter is not hitting the crystal as well. And that'll be the end of the intermission. Now we head into phase 2. Now in phase 2, there's going to be void cores, and they are going to be orbiting around the room in an anti-clockwise direction as shown by these arrows here. We're going to have very specific and carefully placed markers here. These markers, if you look carefully, line up with the little point there at 1 o'clock, sorry, at 12 o'clock. And then over here, we've got them lining up perfectly at 3 o'clock. Then down here, we've got them lining up at 6 o'clock. And over here, we've got them lining up at 9 o'clock. You need to separate them and place them very carefully. And all of the players in those assigned groups from the beginning just need to know what marker, therefore, so healers in this case are going to be all running to star as soon as we get into the intermission. All the melee DPS are going to head over to X because they were all in group 1. All of group 3, including the 2 tanks, is going to head down here, and all of group 4, the ranged DPS, is going to go over here. The reason we do this is because what's going to happen next is an ability called Galvanize. It's going to get cast from Lura in the center outward toward the orbs, and it's going to always target one tank, one melee DPS, one range DPS, and one healer, which is why we split the groups the way that we did. Now, there'll be extra players in the tank group, obviously, and if one of them, like this guy here, the range guy, happened to get targeted, he would have to run himself over to the range section. Or if the melee guy got targeted, he would have to run over to the melee section. But we just have to make sure that we've got the tanks, the majority of the melee ranged, and the majority of the melee DPS, the range DPS, and the healers separate to each other. Now, the first shot of Galvanize, and this is why these markers are so important. If you're standing here at the marker looking at the boss, what you want to do is you fire the first shot of Galvanize very slightly to the right of all of those markers. So the tank one here, you'll note, is slightly to the right of triangle. If you're looking at the boss, the range DPS one is slightly to the right of circle, and the healing one is slightly to the right of star, and the melee DPS one is slightly to the right of X. We do this because as those orbs rotate around, if we're slightly to the right, we will always hit one of the orbs. Now, please note, you've also got the 2 carry players that are walking around with their dawn crystals, and they need to place them to the side before taking the soak. We need all of the players in their assigned group. So everyone in group 2 takes the soak, everyone in group 4, group 3, group 1, everyone takes this soak hit, but these players here specifically have to make sure they drop their dawn crystals outside so we don't spawn those extra soaks that they then have to cover. Once those 4 voids orbs have been hit, they will then retract to the center of the room and they'll come flying back in. And if you're still standing in the way when they hit you, you'll die. So you need to shuffle to the side and let all of those retract and get pulled into the center of the room. Now, the next time we have Galvanize, the second time it fires, this time instead of going slightly to the right, we're going to go straight through. So exactly through those markers, perfectly through. And if we do that, we don't have to look behind us to make sure we're hitting an orb. We will always hit an orb perfectly if we do that. And the same situation occurs though. Those guys that were carrying the Dawn crystals have to place them down with their extra action button and then run themselves in, take the soak, and then run back out and pick those up. Then those ones that were all hit will then be retracted back into the center of the room, and all the players that were standing here will have to move to the side to make sure that they're not getting hit by the retracting orbs because they will kill you if you do. We then do it a third time. The third shot of Galvanize. This time it's slightly to the left. So just a memory. Firstly, the first Galvanize was slightly to the right. The second Galvanize is straight through the markers. The third Galvanize is slightly to the left of the marker. Now, if you do that, you will always hit the next set of orbs as well. And because we've done 3 sets of Galvanize and 4 different shots each time, 3 times 4 is 12. So that is the total amount of orbs that were in phase 2. Now they're all dead. No reason to look behind you or be concerned about it at all, as long as your first shot is slightly to the right, your second shot is straight through the center of the marker, and then the third shot is slightly to the left of the marker. You'll always hit them that way. And the carry players, again, you've got the same job. You've got to make sure you place them down before you take the soak and then run back out and pick them up again. Now, those orbs that all got hit are going to get retracted into the center. All the players that were in the way are going to step out of the way to make sure they don't get hit by them. And then we're going to get Dark Moon Meltdown. Every player after that third one is going to be running to where the tank is, and we're going to get ourselves placed as a pile here because we're going to get thrown into phase 3 as a group, and we don't want to get thrown all the way around the room. We want to make sure that we're all getting thrown in the same direction together. As we do that, There'll be midnight will be affecting the entire room, which is basically doing big damage and doing a 30% movement speed reduction to any player not standing within a bearer circle. And the torch bearer circles are created around those two players that have been carrying around those dawn crystals the entire time. They have a protection bubble around them. So all of the players within the raid need to make sure they're standing in one of those two protection bubbles. At this stage as well, Lura's health should be at 18% or less for this two Dawn Crystal strat to work. Now, there'll be a huge ability called Dark Angel, and it will kill everyone in the raid. The only way to avoid being killed by it is for one of those two players carrying the Dawn Crystals, one of the carry players, to use their extra action button, which in phase 3 doesn't drop the crystal, it consumes the crystal and creates a huge protection bubble that saves everyone. Everyone stands inside the protection bubble, and the Dark Angel ability does not kill you. As soon as that has happened, a black tide will be cast, which is basically a huge area denial that blocks off 1/3 of the room, as indicated down here. You need to dodge that quickly. Usually, a lockgate or druid roar or whatever it is, get you across to the other side of the room quickly. Now we only have one player left, by the way, that's still carrying a Dawn Crystal because we just consumed that last one. So everyone needs to make sure they're inside the stack with that player. There'll be things called dark constellations that spawn, which are all of these different things here. They're going to be filling the room, and you can't bump into them or you're going to take damage. They will all be interconnected by lines, and you can't run through those lines either, although those lines do disappear. So all of the players are going to be looking quickly to try and find a thing called a light siphon, which is basically 3 soaks. It's going to be one usually toward the back of the room, one about the middle of the room, and one toward the front of the room. You have to the entire raid runs into one of them, and within 22 seconds, all 3 of them have to be soaked. So all of these players that are down here are basically going to be running across, standing inside this soak. As soon as that soak is complete, they sprint across, get inside this soak, and then they sprint across and get inside this soak. You got 22 seconds to get all those soaks done. If you don't get them done, it'll be a raid wipe. And then we're going to have the next thing that happens is going to be another huge Dark Angel cast. It will kill everyone, but it won't because we still have one crystal left. This second player that was carrying around the Dawn Crystal will use their extra action button, consume the Dawn Crystal, save everyone inside the protection bubble. And if the boss was at 18% by the time you came into phase 3, the boss will be dead here before you finish being inside this protection bubble. If the protection bubble disappears, healers are just going to throw whatever they can down and try and keep everyone alive as quickly for as long as possible. But you will all die here if you don't have enough DPS because you're now out of Dawnlight barriers, you're out of crystals, you're out of protection. Your movement speed is going to get slowed. Everyone's going to be taking extra damage. So you just got to keep burning the boss here until they're dead. And that's it. That's the end of the fight. Congratulations.